So hi everybody, looks like we're live again. Welcome to Red Hat Coffee Breaks, bite-sized 10-minute chunks of live discussion with some of Red Hat's leading digital technocrats, where we explore riveting and scintillating topics such as unicorn DevOps, agile integration, cloud native, event-driven, and edge technology deployment. Oh, please let us know in the chat box how many episodes you've attended so far and give us a like or two. I think Tommy said earlier that from the last few episodes he's had the biggest number of likes he's ever had in his life on Facebook, so that's a good thing. Thanks for all that. There'll be a poll for you to have your say and a quiz with a great prize for one of you. On top of that, we'll have a live Q&A, which is actually my favorite part, so go for broke. We'll try our best to keep up there, and there's also a chance to win a coffee voucher on us by completing the feedback form for today's session. So later on, you'll actually see a QR code appearing below me at the end of the session. So in today's episode, we went for a role reversal. So it's payback time for Tommy. And I'll be moderating to put the to answer the burning questions about event-driven architecture. So for those of you that didn't attend the prior episodes, here's Tommy Chin, right there, Application Development Solutions Director from Red Hat, who's guaranteed to blow your minds with deep and broad thought leadership on event-driven architecture. So welcome, Tommy. Maybe you could tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, David. Maybe just a little bit. So in my current role, as you rightly mentioned, I handle the application development portfolio for our Red Hat customers. But what I do is basically I help customers with their digital transformation initiatives, as well as the next generation architecture. And I'm really excited to be sharing my experience today.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. So, Tommy, let's start at the very beginning, and perhaps you could share with the audience what you think an event-driven architecture is all about. You know, what makes it rock? How's it kind of different from some of the other common or garden IT architectures out there?
Right. Thanks, David. A great question to start, right? So event-driven systems are actually a new application architecture where system or IT applications are built around or to react to a specific event. So as you know, in the real world digital interactions that you have with any mobile apps or systems, right? Customers are actually shopping online or transferring funds in a bank, which are built based on a business transaction or a request-based model. And this business transaction is actually a type of events.
Wow. Yeah, I've kind of seen some event-driven stuff before in some of the legacy type architectures, but actually this is pretty interesting. So please tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks, David. So I think the current systems that are we find in traditional companies now are actually SOA or API based, which are very adept at handling transactions and requests, which are, as mentioned, one single type of event. However, transactions are not the only event that occurs in the real world. There are other events that happen without transactions. For example, if you're shopping on an e-commerce portal and you're taking too long to actually decide, or maybe you can use GPS or location-driven events when you walk into a mall or you walk into a shop, right? An event is also very versatile because it does not travel and propagate like a transaction-based process where it moves from system A to system B, and it can be consumed or produced by multiple systems at the same time in parallel. Back to you, David.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to really push those Facebook likes through the roof today, Tommy. So to me, there's quite a number of different ways to kind of handle this, or it sounds that way. So what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So I think, in essence, right, companies need to have a system that actually can cater for harnessing and reacting to these business events, right? Businesses that are able to harness these events create systems that are more reactive, right? That they embed into their mobile application or into their digital channel. So, for example, if you're shopping on a certain portal, and it takes you too long to actually make a decision, right? A chatbot pops up and said, look, is everything okay? Do you need more time? So it creates more of a human touch, right? An event-driven architecture, by definition, is simply a system that's able to do this, to harness, process, and capitalize on these real-world business events. I hope that provides a better insight to the definition of an event-driven architecture.
Yeah, that definitely sheds some light on the subject for me, so thanks. So we've covered the kind of basics of event-driven architecture. I think it would be great to really hear right now what the audience thinks. So let's open a poll to hear from our audience too. So the poll question that we're looking at is, what are you currently using as an integration platform for your applications? So for example, it might be like native API driven approach, it might be backend ESBs, it might be a combination of ESBs and message queuing, or potentially ESB message queuing and message streaming. So while everyone's mulling over the poll question, let's turn up the heat on our expert, Tommy. So Tommy, yet another architecture. It's a bit vexing for me, and you've put some heat on me for the last couple of weeks, so now it's payback time, brother. Are you ready for this?
Please be kind to me, sir.
No way, man. So, Tommy, you mentioned that event-driven architecture can be the basis for future integration platforms. I guess some of us have our doubts. So, why do you think we need yet another architecture? And are the current IT integration architectures able to support the business needs you highlighted earlier?
Right. Thanks, David. I think that's a great follow-up question, right? Why do we need a separate architecture to cater for this? So when we look at the birth of integration platforms, it was actually originally designed so different systems and applications can share data, right? That was the original intention. As digital transformation slowly came in, these type of systems evolved into trying to build business services, right, and serving requests from the digital front end. So these are actually transaction based or request based. However, to detect events that are happening and trigger multiple systems to react with it requires very complex modification to the traditional transaction based systems, right? And not to mention, you need to have a system in place to store and manage these different events as well.
Wow, you might want to catch a bit of a breath after that. Actually, just a quick shout out to our fans. So it's great to see Nesta Lim here again, and also Bondi from Lotte. So,
Welcome, Bondi.
so Tommy, what are the design principles of an event-driven architecture?
Right. So basically, from my perspective, a new event-driven architecture can be designed in a way where it doesn't replace traditional service-based architecture, but it actually works in tandem to provide a richer and more fulfilling digital experience to the customer. In fact, in my opinion, any modern integration platform should be able to cater for all four, from the traditional integration patterns and also the web services, right up to the latest APIs, integrating data, and finally, what we're talking about today, the system should also be able to cater for business event streaming, right?
So, brother, I'm supposed to be an expert here as well, but I'm feeling a bit humbled. Thanks so much for all of that, and I'm actually learning quite a lot. I'm sure everyone else wants to know more too. So, what do you think the main components required to build an event-driven architecture are?
Thanks, David. First of all, I'm pretty sure you're just being modest, my friend. But going back to the question, I think event-driven architectures in general consist of three main components, which is the event emitters, the agents, which are potentially any front end or application that you have, but modified to publish and generate events. You have event consumers, which are essentially backend systems that will consume this event and trigger the next actions in the system. And lastly, you have the most important component, which is called the event channels. So, as you know, when we talk about business events, we're not only talking about 2 to 3 events per minute. Generally, events happen all over the system. We're talking about millions of events per second, right? And this could needs a very, very complex system to manage these events, store these events, and basically, the real-time digital system also needs reactive and near real-time response from the backend system, right? So this means that the event channels, they actually have to be high performance, They cannot introduce any delays, right? They need to be highly resilient, distributed, and low latency. So essentially, many companies are exploring different technologies, but one of the most popular, which I've heard, are technologies such as Kafka, which are mature and established for building these event streaming platforms. Back to you, David.
Yeah, sure. So I guess what you're telling us, it's kind of analogous to building like a traditional MOM on steroids. And when I say MOM, I mean message-oriented middleware, not your mother. What a horrible thought. So, so before we continue to the final riveting question, everyone, please don't forget to participate in the poll. It's closing soon, and we really like to hear from you. And don't forget to like us either. That also helps Tommy, helps his ego at least. So now the final question, and my last opportunity to leverage Tommy's obviously vast experience in this space. So I'm sure everyone's interested to know how Red Hat, with its complete portfolio of technology, can actually help customers to transform or augment their business with an event-driven architecture.
Right. Thanks, David. It's actually a very good question to wrap up today's session. As explained earlier, Kafka by itself is a very high performing system, but it's quite complex to manage with many components. Red Hat basically tries to simplify simplify this with an offering called Red Hat AMQ Streams, which provides enterprise supported Kafka and all its components, right? All the components like Zookeeper, Mirror Maker, these are all included in the Red Hat AMQ Streams. To further help customers deploy and operate these complex components, Red Hat provides these versions of Kafka in container format, and even to the extent of writing Kubernetes operators. So customers don't have to key in lines of code in order to deploy Kafka. They can easily use these operators, right? And follow easy steps to deploy this Kafka onto their OpenShift platform. Furthermore, the AMQ stream component is also pre-integrated with the Red Hat Fuse. So as I spoke about earlier on, right, we need to have a complete integration platform, and event-driven is a part of it. So AMQ stream is pre-integrated so that make it easy for our customers to deploy and even incorporate this event-driven architecture to your current ESB architecture platforms. Back to you, David.
Wow, what a mouthful! That's really cool, and it actually excites me to hear that we're moving in that direction. So, actually, right now we're gonna have a quick quiz before we look at the poll results. So there's a very nice book as a prize. It's a pre-order on Amazon called Event Driven or Building Event Driven Microservices. So I hope you've all got good short-term memory for what I was doing a couple of minutes ago, actually like this. So please lock your answers into the comment box, and our panel will decide on the lucky winner after the episode. Or, I don't know, we might just steal the book. What do you think, Tommy?
Actually, I am thinking of doing that. If there are no winners, right, I really would like the book for myself. So please
You could
stop
probably
us
write
from
the book.
stealing the book. Nah,
So,
it's always good to, yeah.
yeah, the question is, what are the three constituents needed to form the basis of an event-driven architecture? So, okay, it's now time to look at the poll results. And actually, we'll go with the Q&A directly after that. So, what do you think about the poll results, Tommy? It looks like we've got kind of 62% of people moving towards like a native API type approach, 15% with backend ESB, and kind of lower proportions that are leveraging messaging and streaming.
Yep. Sure. I think it doesn't surprise me as well because a lot of people out there are trying to cater for digital business. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I mentioned to everyone earlier, digital business is all about serving the customer, like providing a service like transferring funds, getting data, today's interest rates, make an order, and things like that. So that's why a lot of people are focused on the APIs. But as I spoke about earlier, the idea is in order to create a system where the event driven can actually enhance your API interactions, right? Certain things like from when you're shopping, or maybe a location based service where you walk into a shop or doing something different, right? So I think these are the things that you can consider to put in this event-driven parameters into your API calls as well to create better systems.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the poll results are amazing as usual, and it's really awesome to see the level of participation we're getting. And, actually, really, you're all participants, not an audience. So, thanks for that. And, big shout out to you. Don't forget to like this session. So, let's quickly move on to the Q&A segment before we wind up. I'm pretty sure that our participants also have some burning questions. So, let's take a look at one or two questions from the live chat. Get ready, Tommy. This is kind of the hard part usually. So we've got,
Yes.
that's come in from Barendi Rinaldi. Looks like Barendi's from Indonesia. Selamat datang, Barendi. So how does event-driven architecture work is the question.
Right. So, Randy, thank you so much. So, as mentioned before, right, basically, an event-driven architecture is about creating or modifying the applications you have so that they are able to react to events. So, for example, if you have an application to order coffee, right? So right now it is basically more of a transaction based where you call the API and the API gives you a response, right? So in essence, if you want to enrich it, right, there can be some events you can incorporate and build into your API calls. So modifying and having a Kafka-based streaming platform to collect information. So for example, he has ordered this coffee from here, and then another event comes in from the mobile app saying that his location is currently in Malaysia, right? So actually, all these could essentially be events that help enrich your digital transaction. So transforming a traditional API based where I request something and you give me back the answer to something more enriching by adding events onto the application itself, right? I hope that kind of answers your question. Yeah, sorry.
It's a pretty good answer. I'm sure you're going to write an answer to this into the chat later to try and help make that really clear.
Yep.
So let's take a question from Nesta Lim. So Nesta's question is, when architecting a system, what's your recommended approach to be able to handle and monitor the errors coming from events across many systems?
Right. Okay. So that's a very good question, which we talked about having an events channel module, right? In which case, with Red Hat, actually, we're using AMQ streams, which is Kafka based. So first of all, Kafka itself is able to store these messages in different topics and queues in a distributed manner. So for example, I take into my experience, for example, anti-money laundering, right? So when you actually do anti-money laundering, you probably get different interactions. For example, 10 guys are trying to transfer $1 to one guy's account. Right. So every time the $1 is being transferred, in addition to servicing the API, an event is generated to our Kafka and stored in a specific queue. Of course, there needs to be an application to read from the queue and have an intelligence to determine whether this constitutes as a fraud or it's a legal transaction, right? So there can be many other types of business use cases, right? But in general, you do need to set up the event streaming platform to collect these events, put them into topics so that you can write applications that will react to these events in addition to your standard API calls, right? I hope that kind of sort of answers the question from Nesta.
Yeah, I think it does very well, actually. We're probably burning a bit of daylight on that. So I think in the interest of time, we've got time to really answer just one more question. So we've got a question from Yilin Liang. And what she's saying is, I have an event hub which does complex event processing, or CEP as we know it. But I think my organization is using it more for marketing purposes, like real-time marketing campaigns. So can marketing be the main use case for event-driven architecture? Or are there other use cases that are more appropriate in your opinion?
Thanks, David, and thanks, Yiling, for the question. You are definitely right that marketing, real-time marketing, or some people call it NBA, NBO systems, next business action, next business offer systems, were actually built on event-driven architecture. So a customer may have purchased a sneakers or a cross trainer at a shop. It reaches the credit card, goes to the bank, and the bank processes this transaction and gives you another offer to say, look, you have bought sneakers, how about a gym membership, right? So that is actually one of the, I would say, more common use cases that I see for event driven. But as you rightly mentioned, there are many other use cases as well, right? All the way from traditional business use cases, like in banking, we have anti-money laundering and fraud, right? Right up to even right now, IT themselves are using event-driven systems to do serverless computing, right? When a event actually comes in that I need to run a function, so things like serverless and function as a service also relies on this event-driven architecture. But to summarize, basically, that marketing use case is a common use case, but it's not the only use case. There are other use cases like, in the banking or even in other transactions like e-commerce and so forth that you can use event-driven to enrich your digital engagement.
Yeah, so it sounds like creativity is the answer to that, and the use cases really are boundless depending on your own business requirements. So, unfortunately, I
Yes.
think that's all the time we have for this week. So, everyone, look, before you leave, please do share your feedback using the QR code below or the link via the comment box, and stand a chance to win a coffee voucher on us. So, be sure to join us next week on Wednesday at 2 o'clock for another gripping episode, Quarkus, the Java Ant-Man, where Tommy can share again some of his thought leadership. Unfortunately, next week I won't be moderating. I'll be handing over the banner to Waliong. So look at Quarkus, the Java Ant-Man, and how it could potentially change your IT architecture landscape. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you so much and goodbye.